Hi, my name's Pete Turland and welcome to a Rockabilly slap bass. Well, let's start off by getting in tune. Here's a G. D. The A. And the E. Well, first of all, let me talk about the action of the bass. For the slapping style, usually you need the action a little higher than a jazz bass, where most jazz players have the action really low so they can play faster with finger style as opposed to pulling the strings. But if the action's too low, it's hard to get a grip on the strings. So if your bridge is too low, you can get adjustable bridges, which luckily I don't need. My bridge is cut to the right size. But the other thing to do is just get little wooden shims and just put them underneath your bridge to higher the strings a little bit. And then if you do get a jazz gig or anything, you can always take them out and go back. And one thing to be warned about before you start all this, it'll wear the fingerboard out. If you're using steel strings, you'll get big grooves. But it's well worth it. You can always plane the neck, but you'll get more gigs by slapping. Well, let's start off with a standard slapping, pulling of the strings, but let's figure out what we'll play with that. So let's do a walking bass line in C. And for those who are just beginning, that's first position. You're playing a C on the A string, an E on the D string, open G, A on the G string, B flat, A, open G, E on the D string, and C, which should sound like that. And now let me show you how to slap a string. To start off, there's lots of people who grab a string like that, which isn't necessarily the right thing because you're gonna get stuck. And some people play down here, which it gets a different sound, but it's not one that I do. And also you'll get calluses galore and blood blisters and everything. It's very painful. So I tend to do mine just here, which seems to have worked for me for the last while. So the way I do it is two fingers, and instead of pulling the string, I sort of go across and just give it a little slap. The thumb's not doing anything, none of the other fingers. And then once you're sort of getting that sound, you can play a walking bass line that we just learned. Now you see my thumb is hitting the strings, but it's not actually doing anything. It's just easier than tucking it under, else you'll get calluses all down your thumb. So once you've got the single slap, you may notice when doing the walking bass line, I was palming the strings, which gives it a little bit of a jump, a bit of a bounce in it. And to do it with just one note, you'd be going. And then to incorporate that again with the walking bass line, you could do it all the time or just whenever you want, just to give it a little extra bounce. It just adds a little extra bounce to anything you're playing. Well, the next thing I'd like to show you would be the quintessential rockabilly, hillbilly slap. And what you'd be playing is what we call a 1-5, let's say G and a D, and kind of like a bluegrass tune. So you'd be going, and it's much easier to start off on open strings. So, and what you'd be doing is pulling the string the way we just learned, and putting your hand back on to kind of mute the string, else it'll ring and ring. And you can either mute it at the top or mute it there. And what you'd be doing in between the two separate notes is hitting the fingerboard twice. And I'll just give you an idea, and then we'll take it nice and slow. So it would sound like this. Now that's used on an awful lot of rockabilly stuff. So to do it slow, let's give it a go. Now it might take you a little while just to get the grasp of that, for if you are grabbing the string too much underneath, then you'll find it really hard to straighten your hand out and get back for the next string. But if you start off really slow and then just gradually get faster, kind of like riding a horse. And you can do it until your arm drops off. And also, you don't just have to do a 1-5. You can incorporate into the walking bass line you learnt in lesson 1, and that would sound like this. Now you may see me swinging my arm wildly, but it is a good thing for helping you keep tempo. You don't want to be pulling a string so hard that your arm's going everywhere, because you've got to come back. So just sort of it's sort of a bouncy rhythm. So I don't usually go much farther out or less. It always seems to be the same, but that works for me. I'm sure once you get used to it, you'll come up with your own tempo and bounce. But this seems to work for me. So now we've learned two slaps, the single one and the double one. Let's try and incorporate them together with the 1-5, the A and the E, and a walk up. So the notes on the walk up would be, you'd be going A, E, A, E, and that's A on the G string, E on the D string, and you'd be going, which would be E on the D string, F sharp on the D string, and A flat up to A. So let's put those together. And of course, that's very movable, so you can do that as a whole 12 bar with the A to the E, the D to the A, and the E to the B. Let me just give you an example. Now we'll try a rumba beat, which we'll use the part of the walking bass line, the C, the E, and the G, only with a different rhythm. So it'll sound like this. And now what we'll do is incorporate the two slap, and I'll do it really slow for you to start off, and then we'll speed it up a bit. So you'd be going. Now that one might take you a little while just for the weird one note at the end and getting back to the C from the G, because it seems like you're miles away. But once you practice it a bit, it comes easier, and then gradually get faster. And speed is endless, but I will warn you, your calluses will really hurt, especially after a month of doing this. But the only way to get rid of them is to keep on doing it. So, that one should keep you busy. So what we'll try now is the walk-in bass line in C, but using part of the rumba rhythm, and try and put it all together. So it'll go like this. Now that will take a while, but once you get the speed up, it'll sound like this. And again, I'm only using the top of my fingers, and the thumb's hitting the string, but it's not really making a noise. I know some bass players tune their E string down so it does make a noise, but well, your thumb hits it, so it must be in there somewhere, but not intentionally. Well, the next thing I'd like to show you it's using the same slaps that you've already learned, but it's more of like a Willie Dixon style. I don't know, everyone should listen to the Willie Dixon Big Three Trio and Willie Dixon with Memphis Slim. He played with Muddy Waters as well, which is very good bass playing, and lots of slapping. Now this is part of a solo he did with Memphis Slim in Paris, and it's the same slapping. It's going, instead of starting on the key you're in, you're starting on the G and the C in second position and going, but with the slap it makes it bounce, and I use it a lot in bass solos. It's just sort of different. So let me give you an example. And so basically what it is, so you're doing the rumba double slap, the two pulls. And that's a really good exercise to get your hand moving and actually snapping the string quite strongly a couple of times, just to get a bit of dexterity. Well, the next one would be another Willie Dixon tune or style of playing. And again, it's a two-note thing, but it's more it's all about the right hand, and I'll try and do it slow, but it's a hard one to do slow. So again, you're playing, which is just the A and the E, and I'll try and show it to you. Now on this slap you are actually using this part of your hand, and you might see the little callus I've got built up there. That's from sort of hitting the strings hard, and I'm putting my arm in a different position so you can actually get at the other string quicker, because it's a very tight sort of slap. It's not something you can do really slow or really fast. It's sort of just a mid-tempo sort of thing that Willie Dixon used a lot when he was with Muddy Waters. I know Muddy Waters was a blues guy, but Willie Dixon was predominantly a slap bass player. So it's really good stuff to listen to. Well, I'll try and play it as slow as I can, but it's a hard thing to play slow. And what I notice is I am actually tucking my thumb under, and it is actually hitting the string just there. So, and yeah, I can't imagine you can do it with your thumb out. Pull, hit, hit. Well, now I'll try it really slow, and just to give you the way my hand works, I don't think I can play it this slow, but I'm sure this will help you. So, note, so coming back up, you're pulling the string, hitting the string, thumb, other note, and all together again. Now this next one is kind of a triple slap, but it's a different phrasing. If it was a normal slap like I've shown you already, it would be. Now this one's a little bouncier again, and it sounds like this. Now with this one, I am using sort of my palm more. I'm still just using the two fingers to pull the string, but it's really hitting with the palm. And a hand coming back as well. Again, it's another one that is really difficult to show slow, but the idea is pull. Let me do it fast again. Got it. Pull, palm, slap, pull. And again, you can use it in any bass line, but it sounds really good on descending bass lines. Okay, well, I'll try it really slow. It won't sound the same, but it'll give you the idea of what the right hand's actually doing. So it's pull, palm, slap, pull. Pull, palm, slap, pull. Pull, palm, slap, pull. Yeah, if you can learn to do it slow, it's very clever, but I've never been able to. It's a very fast, jumpy type thing, and it sounds great if you're doing a normal bass line. Here's an example of how I'd use it. You'd be doing a normal walking bass line. And it's more of a solo thing than when you're playing with the band, but it's a good thing to have in your arsenal of licks. So lots of people ask, is rockabilly and blues bass playing the same thing? Well, really it's not. Although Willie Dixon played a lot of slap bass with Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, the rockabilly stuff is predominantly slap bass. You listen to early Elvis on Sun Records, where Sun Records recorded a huge amount of rockabilly stuff, as did King Federal and Meteor Records, and they all pretty much had stand-up bass because it all came from the hillbilly aspect, and the blues went more electric, and rockabilly was always the acoustic side of things, because rockabilly was only around for about 6 months. It was like the original alternative music that encompassed the blues, hillbilly, country, gospel, and once it turned to rock and roll, then the electric bass started coming in, and there was really no more rockabilly recorded that stood a chance of getting in the charts. So the difference, I mean, just because now you know how to slap doesn't mean you should do it on everything, because if you're playing, say, a blues shuffle, like now you could never get the punch if you were slapping it, and it would sound really cluttered. So you've got to realize there's a time and a place for slapping the bass and a time not to. You know, if you're playing a nice slow country song or something, you don't want to be, you know, there's a time and a place for it all. But there is a big difference with the blues stuff. Like predominantly most of the bluesy stuff that you could slap on would be a swing tune or a two-beat, where with the rockabilly stuff there's more of a rock groove almost on some of the stuff, and there's still the country aspects of it that bass players do slap on, but predominantly with the blues stuff it's half and half. Well, let me show you an example of where the stand-up bass rockabilly style fits in when playing with a great rockabilly guitar player, is being with my great friend Paul Pagat. Another important thing is strings. There's lots of different styles of strings, like strings for classical players and soft wound and soft chord strings. So I've got 4 different strings on my bass at the moment, so I could give you a demonstration of what they all are and the price range, and just so you know what you're getting into. As an E string, I'm using a steel string, which is a thomastic, basic run-of-the-mill steel string. It's got a sound, and if you try gut strings, then the gut string would be 3 times the size of this. But I kind of like it as a E string. And then the G string, I'm using a nylon wound gut string. These are really good strings. They're quite expensive, but The only thing I find is when you get to the G and the D string, they get really thin and they'll really hurt your fingers. As a D string, I'm using a gut, which for most rockabilly players is predominantly the right way to go. The downfall of gut strings is, one, they're very expensive. You're looking at like $350 a set, and they go dead very quick. But they do sound good and they're soft on your fingers. And now the G string, which was my score of the century, gigging down in Hollywood, I found a Mexican luthier who sold me 2 sets of strings, nylon strings for Mexican basses for $10 a set. And nylon strings are great. I've used them a lot, and usually you have 2 nylon, 2 steel wound, but the nylon do sound like gut strings, but they do heat up. If you're playing lots of fast stuff, they will get very warm on you. But predominantly gut is a good way to go, but again, very expensive. And the other thing is pickups. I know there's few bass players who just like to put a mic in front of the bass, but in a band situation, especially if you're playing with drums, it's really, you have to have it through the monitors, and it messes up the monitors for the vocalist. So there's lots of different options now. It used to be there was only one option, and now there's lots of different ones. I'm using a shadow pickup on mine, which is made in Germany, and there's other pickups I've used in the past. This one's a good pickup. There's the Underwood pickup, which fits in the slots in the bridge, either side, and they work very well. And then there's a Fishman pickup, which fits over the end of the bridge. And then there's a new pickup, a K&K RB, which fits under the fingerboard and in the bridge, and then goes down to the tailpiece and has a preamp with 2 separate volumes, which is, I think at the moment, the way to go for overall sound. And of course, with all these pickups, if you do use a preamp, you'll get way more volume out of an amplifier, because the pickups don't send a very hot signal to most amps. So unless you've got a huge amp with lots of power, a preamp's the way to go. And I'll tell you a little bit about my bass. I bought this off a friend. I helped him pick it out of a store in Calgary. And when I retired my old bass, I called him up and he'd got a couple. So I bought this off him, and it was in perfect condition when I got it. But it's a Czechoslovakian bass, plywood top. As you can tell on the fingerboard, I've got huge grooves from playing. I've actually had the neck plane twice on it, but it's just what happens when you play slap bass. Well, just to let you know, I didn't invent any of this. It's been around forever, but there's lots of things you can come up with that, I'll just give you an example. So nothing's written in stone. You can come up with any wacky stuff you like, and it's, as long as it's musical, you can use it. Well, thank you for getting this video, and hopefully you've learnt a lot. And remember, check out some compilation albums and try and listen to Bill Black with Elvis, and Dorsey Burnett with Johnny Burnett, and Willie Dixon with Muddy Waters. And there's so many great bass players, but just to name a few. And good luck, and hope your calluses aren't too big.